Hello, everybody. This is Pamela getting on here to talk for a little bit about Arthur and other news articles that may pop up in my feed. I know a lot of these news bits have been few and far between. You'll have to forgive me about that. I've been busy taking care of the house here and dealing with what's coming up in mid to late August. I go for my first colonoscopy, but we'll discuss that later. I wanted to get on here to start this off with PBS cutting the cord on Arthur after 25 years. It says here on WGN. And this was actually talked about on a podcast. Let me see what I can find out here. The podcast is called Finding DW. And it talked about that on a podcast. And it's rather sad, really, because I grew up reading the Arthur books. Arthur's Eyes, I think, was the first Arthur book. Then it spurned over into a cartoon that ran for 25 years and has had the longest run of any animated show, at least on PBS, as far as I know. For 25 years. Let's see what it says here about that. See. Okay. This comes off here on WGN. PBS Kids Show Arthur Ending after 25 years. And it comes from WTRF, the iconic children's show Arthur, which airs on PBS Kids, will come to an end after 25 seasons. The final season will air during winter 2022. Kathy Wall, who originally developed the show from the books by Mark Brown, said on the Finding DW podcast with Jason Swimmer, Arthur is no longer in production. We've had a wrap party 2 years ago. Rao told Schwimmer, I think PBS made a mistake, and I think Arthur should come back, and I know I'm not alone about thinking they made a mistake. I don't know if it was a ratings issue or if it felt like it needed to be retired. To me, it felt evergreen, like it was never going to end, but it did end. We finished the last episode, season 25, over 2 years ago. And it says here, if I can get my mouse to work with me here, Arthur features an animated aardvark of the same name and the lessons he learns about kindness, empathy, and inclusion from friends and family while growing up in the fictional city of Elmwood. The show, which debuted in 1996, is the longest-running animated children's show in TV history, and has won 4 Daytime Emmys for Outstanding Children's Animated Program, as well as a Peabody Award. Finding DW is the podcast that explores why Arthur's sassy sister, DW, has always been voiced by boys. Schwimmer who first played one of those male voices at the age of 10. Deborah Tofton, the show's casting director, told Schwimmer in one episode that DW is a rough and tumble little girl who is better voiced by the huskier tones of prepubescent boys. So that's a tidbit I didn't even know about. I always thought that DW was voiced by a girl. But, as they say, she's a rough and tumble little girl who often got into trouble. But Arthur Ending after 25 years, that is something. That probably explains why the last several seasons of that show have been so short. Because I know if you go on Amazon Video, the first season is incredibly long. It's over $40+ to buy. But I do have the Backstreet Boys, where they come to Elmwood City, and Muffy thinks that her best friend has sold out and calls the Backstreet Boys sellouts. I have that DVD signed by the author of that particular book. And Mark Brown is a pretty cool dude. If I find any of my pictures, maybe I'll put that in my picture for this video. But Arthur ending after 25 years. That's something. Even if they don't bring the show back into production, he's got a lengthy body of work in books and in cartoon form, so we could at least have that. I wish all the best for the cast and the crew of Arthur. I know over the years they've had some pretty touchy stories about. Let's see, there was one where Arthur punches his sister because she kept getting in the way of him putting together his model plane. And he kept telling her, don't touch it, don't touch it. And one time she tries to make it fly and it falls out the window, breaking it. And he says, I told you not to touch it. And he punches her. And it seemed like Arthur got the worst of the deal while BW played the pity party. And I do have to agree with that, because if a young sister doesn't understand the meaning of don't touch it, and the parents don't do nothing about it, that's pretty sad. And then there's another one that really hits close to home for me in terms of cancer. As you all know, they did a story where Mrs. McGrady, the school lunch lady, is sick, and the kids don't know where she is, till Mr. Ratburn says that Mrs. McGrady has cancer, they caught it early, and she'll be back as soon as she can come back. But in the unfortunate case of my mother, she didn't live past her cancer. But they had Lance Armstrong, the poster boy for testicular cancer. But we all know the real story behind Lance Armstrong, don't we? Him doping, and he lost all his awards because of that. And because of that episode about Mrs. McGrady got banned because of Lance Armstrong's voice appearance and likeness. But there's another one that I really like, and that's the one about the Backstreet Boys. I know a lot of kids remember that one. The Backstreet Boys are coming to Elmwood City, and Muffy's friend is over the moon, and she's daydreaming about seeing the boys as they taxi in on their plane. But Muffy isn't having it. She calls the Backstreet Boys sellouts, and I think it was Francine calls them sellouts, and just really makes things hard for her best friend who really likes the group. Mark Brown had a great character, and he turned it into a big, I don't know, it's just kind of a shock. You kind of want shows to run forever, just like people want ER to come back. For those of you youngsters out there that don't know the show ER, check out the Pop Culture Network. They run it every morning during the week for several hours, from 6 until about 1, in my area anyway. But Arthur is leaving the air after 25 years. It's hard to fathom. But I know, I knew something was up because, the first seasons, you had a whole gaggle of them. Almost $50 for the first season. And I've been buying a few episodes. I haven't done it in a while. So I'm trying to save money for my doctor's appointment for next month at the end. So, yeah, not fun. But, I do have some Arthur books. I have some on my tablet. The Halloween one, I know for sure I have on my tablet. And Arthur's Eyes, I totally identify with that story because I know I should wear glasses, but I don't like to wear them. because I thought they would make me look like a nerd. And I know when I was younger, I had to go and get glasses. And my parents knew that I wasn't in the mood to look at nerdy frames. And what I mean by nerdy, we go into one of these optical places and, they hand in my script, and they check your eyes to see when you can see clear. And they have like little lines to keep your line of sight. And they showed me all these frames, and one of them was like tan and dark brown and looked like Arthur's glasses, but with like little dots in them. And I'm like, I know you don't think I'm going to be wearing those damn things. So I found me like a pair of nice frames. They're like little metal frames with like clear glass, and they help with my lazy eye. They have like a special prescription to help people with lazy eye. And I wasn't too happy about it, but sometimes I wear them, but just not often enough. But I could certainly relate to Arthur in some situations, like my mother having cancer. Unfortunately, they were supposed to show Mrs. McGrady actually being gone. There's a story going on about that. They talk about how Arthur was supposed to show Mrs. McGrady going into a white light, but they kind of stayed away from that. And many of the kids would go and visit Mrs. McGrady, bring her orange juice, and DW with their stuffed animals. That's pretty great. And then you have the rich bitch. I forget her name, but she couldn't even do dishes. She was so inept. And then Arthur and DW come over and they help her out in cleaning the house. And I did have it up on one of my YouTube channels a while back with my mom's picture and dedication to her. Because I think stories about cancer need to be told, just like what happened with Mr. Ratburn getting married to the person of a same sex. And I know a lot of people raised a firestorm about that, but they have a right to live, love, and be happy anyway. Doesn't bother me, never has. And then I noticed that over the last several years, the quality of the animation has gone down. Now, I know with the pandemic and everything, people cannot donate like they used to. And that's sad. I think they should keep Arthur on the air because he is universal. He is every kid that has had the chicken pox, the flu, and had a bratty sister or a bratty brother that they have to deal with. It's just like, I think DW wants to have an even keel with her brother, but she can't. He's 10 and she's like 5. So, yeah. But I thought it was a rumor, but I saw a video on here that talked about Arthur going off the air after 25 years. That is hard to fathom. But there are very few Arthur DVDs out there. And one of the rarest ones that I know that a lot of people don't have is the one about the Backstreet Boys. And I have the book around here somewhere that's signed, and I have the DVD that's signed. And you want to know how I managed that? About a year or two before my mom died, I found out that Mark Brown was coming to my city of Columbus, Ohio, to the main library downtown. And I wanted to go down there and get some books signed and have something nice for my niece. So I picked up some books for her, and I picked up some books for me. And he could only sign at least one of my books, and I handed him my Backstreet Boys book and DVD. They had to put me to the front of the line because I was due to leave at about 8 o'clock that night. So, and you could imagine the fans that Arthur has, and I'm one of them. And Mark Brown was so nice, so congenial. He talked about how Arthur first looked when he entered the books. He used to have like a long nose, and then they changed up his look. And then, he talked about his career and how long the show may run. And I knew that Arthur would be in good hands. And I know Mr. Mark Brown is a good guy. He wants to talk about things that are important. And I heard a lot of mess about people getting into an uproar over an animated character marrying a same sex. It doesn't bother me. Just like I want to get married and have kids, but I never had that opportunity. And I've heard stories about a kid or a girl in college, doing the thing in college, and sometimes they get into a romantic relationship and they end up pregnant. And she had the baby, but the boyfriend she was with ended up leaving her, and she wound up taking care of the child mostly by herself. But they look at you like you're some kind of a freak. And people shouldn't have to feel that way. People have the right to live, love, and be happy. And a lot of the firestorm over Arthur, I think, kind of helped in its demise, in a sense. Because I hear a lot of people, well, I'm not going to let my kids watch Arthur if they have such a view like that. I still watch Arthur from time to time. It's not as much as I would like, but I'm not paying for all kinds of streaming services. I can't right now. But I want to say thank you to the cast and crew of Arthur for bringing such a wonderful show to life and giving a lot of young kids something to hold on to and give them topics that they can talk about. Especially, I have the Thanksgiving one that they released last year, and I think the animation is just okay. It's not like it could be, but like I said, a lot of people can't donate to PBS like they once did. Too many people are out of a job. We got this pandemic thing going on, and it stinks. I'm surprised. I haven't seen anything about an episode for the pandemic. But then they ceased production at least 2 years ago, by what the article said. But I think shows like Arthur and even Daniel Tiger is suffering from shorter seasons. I know by August the 16th, they're supposed to have some new episodes out on Daniel Tiger. But I think they ceased production a few years ago. But enjoy Arthur while you can, because by 2022, that show will be gone. And it's not the first show to be leaving TV after this year. So Judge Judy is also leaving the air. She's had a run for 25 years and probably is one of the longest running court television shows to fight off people like Judge Faith, Judge Christina, America's Court. Judge Mathis is a close second. And even Judge Alex. Let's see, what else? Judge Maybelline and the other chick. I can't think of her name, but I have a couple cases on one of my other channels. But long-running shows are leaving the air, especially Arthur was a long-running program. ER left the air over 10 years ago and had 15 seasons. So, yeah. And there's talk of people wanting to bring ER back. But I think they should leave things like that well enough alone. Because a lot of people liked Dr. Green. They liked Dr. Carter, Dr. Pratt. And people hated Dr. Romano with a passion. So, yeah. But down below, I have the article in description that talks about Arthur leaving the air after 25 years. And it's sad. It really is. Because kids might not have access to digital media like I have. I better start snapping up Arthur episodes if I want to keep them all. So, but I'm waiting for my next round of money to come in so I can get the last episodes of let's see, Daniel Tiger. They've already got the new ones out on the digital platform, but I want to wait and buy them so I can have them in my permanent library. So, yeah. Now we can move on to other news. You know, I heard about the Tokyo Olympics and how they're having a lot of problems with Simone Biles. She has withdrawn from the Olympics all around, citing her mental health. So let's go with that first. Oh, you'll have to forgive me. The tornado sirens that let you know it's noon have gone off. But let's look at this. Simone Biles out all around competition from Tokyo Games. Let's see. Simone Biles will not take part in Thursday's all-around competition where she was expected to defend the gold medal she won in 2016 in Rio. On Tuesday, the decorated 24-year-old American took herself out of Tuesday's team competition after a single rotation, citing inability to focus due to mental health issues. Oh, poor kid. Let's see. The USA Gymnastics announced on Wednesday that she will sit out for the all-round as well. After further medical evaluation, Simone Biles has withdrawn from the final individual all-around competition at the Tokyo Olympic Games in order to focus on her mental health, the statement had read. Biles, who qualified first overall on Sunday, will be replaced by Jade Carey, who came in ninth overall. Susia Lee, who qualified third, will join Carey. It's not determined if Biles will return for any of the individual finals that she qualified for: vault, the balance beam, uneven bars, or floor. Simone will continue to be evaluated daily to determine whether or not to participate in next week's event finals, and the USAG had said. Tuesday, after leaving the team event, she stated that she was still struggling with some things and having trouble dealing with outside expectations and opinions. She thought that her mental health was under control, but after arriving at the Olympics, it had altered things. She says, I felt pretty comfortable coming into the Olympic Games, and then I don't know what happened, Biles said. It's just going through each of the days and training, it just felt a little bit tougher. The issues prevented her from being able to focus mentally on the complex aspects of her routine. On Tuesday, she attempted a vault only to lose track of where she was in the air and needed remarkably physical control to avoid injury. You know, and they say the vault is usually her strongest event, but she scored fourth, lowest in the competition. She removed herself soon, explaining she didn't want to further damage the American team's score, and went on to win silver. She didn't promise to return or rule out outright retirement. She would say she would take things one day at a time and see what happens. But I have to say, that poor girl, you know, it makes you wonder what the emotional toll that the Olympics takes on any young gymnast, not just Simone. I know she's terrific. I've seen videos of her, and she's incredible. Simone Biles is not participating this week, as far as we know, and who knows if she'll be back. You know, she's got to take things one day at a time and just kind of wait and see what happens. But I think the stress of having to perform, you know, that could wear on your mind. And no child should ever have to feel that way. No boy, no girl should ever have to feel that way. If you don't want to do the Olympics, you don't have to. It doesn't make you any less of a person. And as far as I'm concerned, Simone, you have accomplished a lot. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. If the stress is too great, take your time. If you want, you can go home. You can enjoy time with your family. You did your job. Again, Simone Biles is out of current competitions as things now stand, and who knows if she'll be back next week. And she's either going to take it one day at a time or maybe consider retirement. I'll share the article with you in the sidebar, and you guys could take a look at it when you have leisure. So, yeah. I mean, it's just beyond sad. It really is. Let's see. That's just part of the problem that's happening over there in Tokyo. You know, they're having extreme heat also. So, yeah. There's the link. So if you guys want to look at that at a later time, you can do that. But yeah, let's see. Let's finish up this stream with another article here. Whoa, I don't want to get out of that. So hang on. Go back to Yahoo and let's see. Yeah, let's see. Medvedev, a tennis pro, Daniil Medvedev, asked what happens if he dies on court as Tokyo Heat wreaks havoc with tennis. Yep, this is also from Yahoo Sports. Let's see. Let me go ahead and share this with you if I can. And there's a long ass link here. Hang on. As you know, there's a big heat wave going on over there in Tokyo. Hello. Here's some other articles. We'll get back and I'll summarize everything when I'm done reading here. Okay. Yeah. The tennis player, Medvedev, asked what happens if he dies on court as Tokyo Heat wreaks havoc with the tennis. And it says, this came out this morning at 1:49 a.m. And it says, as you might have heard, the summer heat has created oppressive conditions across the games for athletes. No sport is ailing as much as tennis right now. Amid the struggles that are visible, with 90-degree temperatures and high humidity, Russian tennis player Daniil Medvedev put those struggles into some of the most frank words possible when he asked the chair umpire point blank, what happens if he were to die? I can't finish the mash, but I can die. Medvedev could be heard saying, if I die, are you going to be responsible? He says. Medvedev is no stranger to bombastic behavior, required trainer attention during the second set amid struggles to the heat and an abdominal injury. The third round match was also paused for 10 minutes going into the third set to allow him and his opponent, Fabio Fognini, some time to recover. Medvedev, the world number 2, would eventually survive both the conditions and a spirited challenges from Fognini, advancing to the fourth round with a 6-2, 3-6, and 6-2 win. He got off easy compared to some of his peers, though. And another one had retired to the heat. Paula Badusa retired due to heat. Soon after Medvedev's victory, world number 29, Paula Badusa of Spain, had to retire due to heat exhaustion. She was eventually taken off the court in a wheelchair. Wow. And people are talking about it on Twitter. One person says, "Oh no, Badusa retires, down 3-6 to Martika Bondarusa, struggling with the heat. Still scheduled dual play doubles today. Such brutal conditions." And another one, the same guy says, "No way, Padusa is coming back to play mixed doubles with Carlino later today. Tough scenes to watch." And they actually show him in a picture, the one taken off in a wheelchair. And they said Bondarusa, who defeated Osaka in the third round, will advance to the semifinals, with Badusa most certainly out for her mixed doubles match scheduled for later in the day. Complaints about the heat have been a reoccurring story around the games. Previously peaked. Complaints about the heat have been a recurring story around the games, and previously peaked when Russian archer Savitina Gombarosa passed out due to heat exhaustion. Both Medvedev and world number one Dvorak criticized the scheduling in earlier rounds, each lobbying for delayed start times to avoid the midday sun. Wow. That is crazy. Let's see what the comments are saying on this article. If I can read them. Okay, show comments. Okay. One says, "I don't understand why the tennis players are having a rough time in the heat. Have they ever played in extreme heat before the tournaments? Inquiring minds would like to know." And somebody made the comment, copied and pasted the comment, "If I can finish, I can't finish the match, but I can die. Are you going to be responsible?" Olympics thinking, maybe we can get funeral home sponsors. Casket promos. One person says, "Wimps, I live in Tokyo. We're no worse than the Australians Open every year." A real asshole says that. I disagree with most of the comments against Medvedev. Any organization that conducts sporting events has the responsibility to make sure the players are not exposed to extreme weather. The Olympic Committee has a history of sticking to the schedule and ignore the weather. They must set a limit on the highest temperatures allowed on the court. This will disrupt the schedule and cause delays in completing the events on time. But the safety of the athletes is most important. Heat stroke can cause brain damage. The problem is more common in cricket. Recently in West Indies, their women's team was playing Pakistani women. Two of the West Indian players fainted on the field. And were taken to hospital. Medvedev's correct in making his statement. The Olympic committees must listen. We all enjoy watching a tennis match, but nobody wants to see a player ending up with brain damage. And the guy is a doctor. His name is John A. Moses, medical doctor. God, people are just sick. A guy named Dick, which is more appropriate, says, "Can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Must be a mental thing." God. And it's just sad. It really is. People can be so dumb. Look at those articles. I know. It's sad. It really is. You had one person taken off the court in a wheelchair. What they don't seem to understand is you could be as fit as all hell and people could have heat stroke and they can die. You know, you could be an ordinary mailman walking around in the heat, and it's hot here in Ohio. You know, people could die. They could have heat stroke. I know years ago when I was really young, we were waiting for my mom to get off of work, and the mailman was coming around doing his rounds, and there's a house on the corner from me where a neighbor of mine used to live. They had to help the mailman who got overheated, and they put ice on him, and they called for emergency services. And my dad says, I'm not leaving you here. You know, I'm not leaving you here. I'll put you in the car. We're going to go over and pick up Mom. So, yeah, and seeing all that emergency equipment scared the living fuck out of me. You know, and people on this commentary, let me go back to that. We're calling them pussies. You know, and the guy had the right to ask that question. I can finish the match, but I can die. Medivh could be heard saying, if I die, are you going to be responsible? And he has every right to ask that question. They already took one guy off the court in a wheelchair. You know, and it's sad. It really is. You know, and I'm going to say you could be fit as all hell and you could still suffer from heat. So you could be as fit as can be and can still suffer. Oh, come on. EXAUST. Shame on most of you. Safety is more important than some game. You know, people have passed out. People have gotten sick. You know, and it's not just this thing about Simone Biles. You know, I understand they have to keep to a schedule, but there are times when you just have to say, forget that. It's too dangerous. Maybe Tokyo should have their courts indoors and air conditioned. Especially when you have 90-degree plus temperatures. You know, and it's just like with me. You know, I can't handle the heat. And I certainly can't handle extreme cold. I'm not a gymnast by any means. I don't ever intend to be. But you try that in a wheelchair. I could wear all the sun butter I want. And I could get red as a beet. I went to Kings Island one year. I was still in middle school. And I wore like those little tops. They're like tennis tops. They don't have sleeves, but they have like little things here. And my mom put a lot of sun butter on me that day, made sure I was hydrated. And I rode around in the park looking for my brother all that day. And I still got sunburned, and I looked like one of those crabs, you know. Red as a beet, hurt like hell. Yeah, I know. I didn't realize how bad I was burned until that night when I went to go to bed. And I was red. If you ever watched the show ER, especially the first year, they had a guy that came into the ER with a red front. I'm talking blood red. And I guess Jen and Dr. Green wanted to get it on. And I guess somebody bumped into the guy and he was hurting. That, you know, I felt that pain. My mom's like, well, you're burnt pretty bad. I got some aloe out here. I'll smear some on you, but you can't put the covers over you. So if it weren't for that aloe, I would have been in pure misery, but I was already miserable enough. Not just when the burn went away, they had all that skin peeled off. And I never forgave my brother for that, because I would have been riding rides if he hadn't come along. Maybe I wouldn't have been burnt so bad. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Oh, God. Seasoning products being recalled by McCormick. I'll look at that later. But, that's just cold on the part of the Tokyo officials, and the Olympic Committee especially, because a lot of people entrust their youngsters, if you want to call it that, to this event. These kids worked hard and they trained hard, and you could be as fit as a fiddle, and yet you could have heat stroke, exhaustion, or possibly death. I don't ever want to see that again, And it wouldn't be the first time I've nearly succumbed to the heat. I went to a tug of war thing for my dad's old Eagles club. And it was up in Corning, Ohio. It was out in the middle of nowhere. There was no shade to be had. We all had to sit in the stands. And even if they watered us down, by the end of that day, I was so sick. We went back to my parents' camper at Zanesville, and my dad says, "You need to take Pammy home. She's not looking well. Maybe if you get her back in the house environment, maybe she'll start feeling better." And I had to ride all the way back to Columbus, some 40 miles, with my head hanging partially out the car. And I knew I was starting to feel the effects of the heat. There are some people that have a sensitivity to heat and a sensitivity to cold. You could be as fit as you want to be, and yet you could still suffer from it. And that guy had every right to ask the referee, "I can finish the match, but if I die, are you going to be responsible?" And I think lives are much more important than some flimsy metal that'll probably get hung up and collect dust on somebody's dresser edge or bed edge. Or hanging on the wall collecting dust. And it's really sad. It really is. Let's see what else they're saying on the news before I get off here. Let's see. Let's go back to Yahoo proper. But I said, it's just really sad. It's just really, really sick and sad how people can be. You can call them pussies, you can call them pansies, but oh, man. Oh, yeah. Let's see. I guess Trump's side won a free speech, but I don't want to go into that because I know how sick Trump really is. Oh, okay. Oh, my God. There's a couple of good, juicy stories here. Dad sees ex-wife and her boyfriend at son's soccer game and kills them, a Texas cop says. Oh, my God. Wow. This one I want to go into first before I scroll back and look at any other stories that I found here. I know. Here's another article for you. I'm going to read it for those that can't see. If you think that's crazy, check that out. But, I'm not going to give Trump's supporters the time of day, and any court that grants a nut job over free speech can kiss my butt. See? Let's go. Dad sees ex-wife and her boyfriend at son's soccer game and kills them. Oh my God. And she was pregnant. Pregnant woman and man shot and killed at Northwest Harris County. This came out on the 26th. So, yeah. A man killed his ex-wife and boyfriend at a soccer game in Texas, officials had said, sending players running off the field for cover. The man, who is 42 years old, was watching one of their sons play soccer when he spotted his pregnant ex-wife and her boyfriend, according to the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Armed with a silver revolver, he approached and shot them multiple times at a parking lot near Matthias Amida Training Center, northwest of Houston, Texas authorities said. I was on the bench watching the game. I heard the first gunshot. I looked around to see what was happening, Angel Guerrero told KPRC. I thought it was like a car crashing or a wheel exploding or something like that. That's when I saw the guy pick up the gun and started shooting at both the woman and the man. A chaotic scene of players fled the field and leaping over a fence for safety was captured on a video by KPRC. And you could go to that and you could look at it. It's on YouTube. Let's see. The boyfriend, who was 35, died at the scene, and the woman, who was 29, died at a hospital, officials had said. The Harris County Sheriff's Office initially said the woman was pregnant, but that was not confirmed by a medical examiner as of Monday. KHOU, so she may or may not have been pregnant. And if she was, I'm sorry. Less than 2 hours after the shooting, the guy who killed them died in an apparent suicide from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was found with the silver revolver was next to his body. The ME identified as Lucio Estrada Molina. KHOU reported. The woman and man killed at the shooting had not been identified on Monday. I'm just surprised things like this happen. We didn't expect it at a soccer game. Oh, God. Just makes me sick. And then on the bottom part of that, they talk about a New York City woman charged with multiple anti-Asian hate crimes and held without bail. God. Let's see what she did. A woman facing hate crime charges for a string of strikes against Asian Americans in New York City was held without bail over the weekend. The 25-year-old was arrested on Thursday for alleged attacking 4 Asian Americans beginning in May. All incidents took place in Queens, according to NBC New York. The first incident occurred in a parking lot on Kessina Boulevard on May 23rd. Bell allegedly punched the 24-year-old man in the face, took his glasses, and ran off, as per CBS New York. The second one took place at a grocery store on Parsons Boulevard on June 16th. Bell allegedly approached the 34-year-old woman and asked her, quote, "Why are you looking at me?" and punched her in the back of the head, WABC reported. The third one occurred at the corner of Parsons Boulevard and 72nd Avenue on July 11th. This lady, Bell, allegedly approached a 63-year-old woman, slapped her face, and removed her mask. God. Let's see here. And it says the fourth and most recent one took place on 71st Avenue and Parsons Boulevard. Bell allegedly approached a 75-year-old woman who had been collecting bottles and struck her in the back of the head with a hammer, leaving her with a laceration, according to Sunnyside Post. The charges. This bitch was charged with robbery as a hate crime, assault and hate crime, and grand larceny as a hate crime, as well as aggravated harassment and criminal possession of a weapon, according to the Queens District Attorney, Melinda Katz. She faces up to 25 years in prison if convicted. Racism is immoral and unacceptable. Acting on one's prejudices is a crime. Defendant must answer for allegedly attacking 4 different victims, all people of Asian descent, during sudden violent outburst of rage here in Queens County, Katz had said in a statement. Bell was ordered held without bail on Saturday, the Post reported. The 25-year-old confirmed that she was the woman captured in screenshots of surveillance tapes at 3 of the crime scenes. The 4th victim reportedly needed 7 stitches to her lacerations, Bell told the police. I was there, she was begging for money, and I hit her. Bell returns to court on August the 16th. God, you are so sick. You are so sick, you dumb bitch. Let's see, the name of the woman, if you want to know. Let's see here. If I can find her name. Her name is Marcia Bell. She's 25 years old. And you know, she's black. A 25-year-old black woman threw her life away because she hates Asians. But you know what? I hate her. You don't go around picking on people because you have a conniption problem. I hope they lock her up for more than 25 years. They should give her 25 years for each crime. Because she's dangerous if she's doing that shit. I know. It's absolutely deplorable, and it makes me sick. And this is what the Trump community has authorized. You know, slapping somebody, pulling off their mask, hitting somebody with a hammer on the back of the head. Maybe they should do that to her ass and give her lacerations. It makes me sick, man. Makes me sick. And I say, fuck that bitch. And then we'll finish this off with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz getting heckled off the stage while defending Capitol rioters. Really? Oh, jeez. You know, and it says, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican of Georgia, has made a career out of publicly harassing her imagined enemies. She got a dose of her own medicine on Tuesday when her joint press conference with Representative Matt Gaetz, a Republican from Florida, Louis Gohmert, and a Republican from Texas, and Paul Gosar from Arizona, a Republican also, was broken up by protesters, one of which was armed by a very loud, very shrill whistle. The presser outside the Department of Justice was primed to offer some counterfactual counter-programming to the January 6th hearing down the road at the Capitol, during which Capitol Police officer detailed the horror of what they experienced, defending the building from rioters who beat them with batons, racial slurs, and threatened to kill them with their own guns. The 4 Gs of the discrimination apocalypse were out to advocate for the rioters, saying that they had been mistreated by the Department of Justice. And to that, I say bullshit. Let's go on down here. But the lawmakers were met by a large group of protesters. One toted a large inflatable, particular ex-president, holding a sign that read, "Pedophiles for Trump," a reference to the Justice Department's ongoing investigation into whether Gaetz sex trafficked a 17-year-old, which he has denied any wrongdoing. Another held a board that read, "Traitors and rapists, sit down." Another would not stop blowing a whistle through his COVID mask. "First of all, the guy who's blowing the whistle, we are not deterred," Greene said upon taking the podium. 30 seconds later, protesters crowded the podium and the press conference was called off. The whistle did not stop blowing. You know, and there's some Twitter things from C-SPAN, from another user, and there's like 3 of these from CNN to other people. One says, protesters interrupted press conference with Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and others, and January 6th press conference ends. And it says here, they have a lot of footage, so you can go into these articles and you can watch any footage that I share with you. And they said Reps Taylor and Greene ran out of their own presser at the Department of Justice. Let's see. The intolerant left has shut down the patriotic press conference by... Yeah, let me see here. And they talk about that. They say it's fitting that the press conference was called off while Greene was speaking. The conspiracy theorist has a long history of aggressively trolling those with whom she disagrees. In 2019, she followed Parkland High School shooting survivor David Hogg in D.C., verbally harassing him about his support for gun control. It took Greene until early this year to admit that Parkland's shooting actually happened after previously having claimed it was staged. So in other words, this woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is a bully and an insider. She didn't believe that Parkland actually happened. Yeah, and I'm like, tell that to the little ones that didn't get to come home to their mom and dad, bitch. And she verbally harassed the guy who survived, David Hogg, about his support for gun control. And it took her till early this year to admit that the Parkland shooting actually happened. And it says she has used similar intimidation tactics since joining Congress in May. The Post reported that she trailed Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat from New York, out of the House chamber yelling, "Hey, Alexandra," asking why she supports Black Lives Matter, which she falsely labeled a terrorist group. A few months earlier, Representative Cori Bush, a Democrat from Missouri, tweeted about a similar encounter. A maskless Greene and her staff berated me in a hallway, Bush wrote. She targeted me and others on media. I'm moving my office away from hers for my team's safety. Goes on to say down here, after the press conference to defend the Capitol rioters had been shut down, Greene was whisked down a sidewalk, trailed by protesters shouting at her. She didn't address them, just like Hogg didn't address her in 2019. He's a coward, Greene said. Then one of the school shooting survivors. We doubt she'll be applying the term to herself after her escape on Tuesday. Man, they need to get her out of Congress. She is not fit. She is not stable. She is not balanced. She is not anchored. And like I said, I keep thinking back to Sandy Hook and any other shooting. And it's sad. And I watched some of that footage yesterday from the committee. They were on point with everything. Especially when they tried to, when the Republicans tried to call the traitors that stormed our lovely Capitol as tourists. What kind of bullshit is that? So, yeah, let's see. Down here at the bottom, racism of rioters takes center stage on January 6th hearing. And I want to say, before I read this article, I want to applaud those police officers that went onto Capitol Hill and put their stories out there for all to hear. And how some of these protesters that didn't want Trump to leave office tried to gouge some of their eyes out. That's just some of the things that some of these rioters wanted to do that day. Let's see. It says it had only been hinted at previous examinations of the January 6th Capitol insurrections. Scores of rioters attacked police officers, not just with makeshift weapons, stun guns, and fists, but with slurs and accusations of treasons. 4 officers, 2 from the U.S. Capitol Police and 2 from the D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department on Tuesday, detailed the racism and bigotry that they encountered during the violent assault at the Capitol. The direct, harrowing accounts laid out the hours when the pro-police sentiment supporters of Citizen Trump was pushed aside, consumed by the fury of wanting to keep him in the White House. Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn told lawmakers about an exchange he had with rioters who disputed that President Joe Biden had defeated Trump in the last election. When Dunn, who is black, argued with the rioters and that he voted for Biden, and that his vote would be counted or should be counted, the crowd began hurling the N-word at him. So this police officer, Henry Dunn, told lawmakers that he voted, that he told some of the rioters that he voted for Biden, that it would be counted, and yet the protesters didn't want to hear that, so they called the guy the N-word. One woman in a pink MAGA hat or MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This N voted for Biden," said Dunn, who has served more than a dozen years on the Capitol Police Force. Then a crowd of possibly 20 joined in, screaming, "Blue, fuck N's," or fucking N. He testified, "No one has ever called him the N-word while he was in uniform. That night he sat on the Capitol Rotunda and cried." Ahead of Tuesday's hearing, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, a member of the panel, said the Capitol and police officers would provide insight into what happened, what it was like to be on the front lines. However, Dunn was also speaking to the experience of being an African American police officer who makes up about 29% of roughly 2,300 officers and civilians serving on the Capitol Police Force. Dunn said that another black officer told him while confronting rioters on January 6th, he was told to put your gun down and we'll show you what kind of N you really are. Wow. Oh, those poor guys. Let's go down here, and it says, let me repeat that. Dunn said another black male told him that while confronting the rioters on January 6th, he was told to put the gun down and we'll show you what kind of N you really are. The panel's chairman, Democratic Representative Bonnie Thompson of Mississippi, pressed Dunn further about how he felt about being an African American officer facing down racist and enduring racial slurs in the halls of democracy. He says, and I quote, "It's just so disheartening that people like that will attack you for the color of your skin," Dunn replied. "Once I was able to process it, it hurt. My blood is red. I'm an American citizen. I'm a police officer. I'm a peace officer," unquote. While Black Americans make up 13% of the U.S. population, there were roughly 11% of all police officers in 2016 across a sampling of 18,000 local law enforcement agencies in the states, according to the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics. Over 71% of officers were white in 2016. So in 2016, 71% of the officers were white in 2016. Let's see, it says, is this kind of treatment endured by black men and women in law enforcement that policing experts say makes recruitment and diversity among U.S. police forces challenging. The law enforcement profession has also struggled with its origins in America, dating back to the slave patrols in the early 1700s, formed to capture people who escaped slavery and terrorize the enslaved into submission. Although many African Americans have served valiantly in local and federal police forces since the civil rights movement, data shows that Black Americans are still arrested in disproportionate numbers and more likely to be fatally shot by cops. Another Capitol Police officer, Sergeant Inquino Janelle, wiped away tears as he recalled the story of his immigration to the U.S. That man immigrated from the U.S. To the U.S. from the Dominican Republic, only to face fellow Americans who considered him a traitor for defending the Capitol on January 6th. So the second cop I mentioned came over from the Dominican Republic and decided to join the Capitol Police and defend the honor of our country, because we, the American country, gave him a chance to come over here for a better life. And yet the protesters wanted to bastardize him for protecting the Capitol. And it says, it's very disappointing, that man says. I saw many officers fighting for their lives against people, rioters, and citizens turning against us. Gonell, an Iraq War veteran, also called out the desperate law enforcement response to the overwhelmingly white crowd of rioters, and the response to racial justice protest in 2020 that followed the murder of George Floyd and the police-involved deaths of other Black Americans. As America and the world watched in horror to what was happening to us at the Capitol, we did not receive timely reinforcements and support that we needed. In contrast, during the Black Lives Matter protest last year, Capitol Police had all the support we needed and more. Why the different response? And that is very pertinent to what happened that we saw on the live stream yesterday. We need to call that out. Indeed, law enforcement agencies in dozens of cities last year showed overwhelming force toward Black Lives Matter demonstrators. Many used chemical dispersants, rubber bullets, and hard-to-find or hand-to-hand combat with largely peaceful crowds and some unruly individuals and looters. By the end of last year, in 2020, police had made more than 14,000 arrests. In January, as images and video emerged from the attacks on the Capitol, a racist and anti-Semitic element among the rioters became apparent. One man was pictured inside of the Capitol carrying a Confederate battle flag. And in the nearly 7 months after the attack, video investigations revealed several rioters had flashed white supremacist gang signs and white power hand signals during the insurrection. Gonell also called out the hypocrisy that he received from many of the rioters who professed to support the law enforcement, the thin blue line, as it's called. But he did not agree with those protesting over Floyd last summer. There were some who expressed outrage when someone simply kneeled for social justice during the national anthem, Dunn said. Where are these people expressing outrage to condemn the violent attack on law enforcement officers in the U.S. Capitol and our American democracy? I'm still waiting for that, he said. And that's, he has every right to be concerned. He has every right to be angry. So, yeah, there's more articles at the bottom of that. So, yeah, I'm not going to bore you anymore with any more articles. But, it's just sad. It really is. Yeah, I know. It's sad. Over 48% here in my state is vaccinated, but you have the anti-vaxxers that are causing the recent increase in COVID. And it's really, really sad, and it's really, really sick. And it's not just the Black woman who terrorized Asian Americans. There were other people that have terrorized Asian Americans. I think one out in San Francisco got her head handed to her by no fault of her own. And she didn't speak a word of English, but they had her on TV. She was still bleeding from the attack. And now she's too scared to even go out her front door. And then another woman was punched on her way to church. And I blame Trump and his cronies for everything that's happened. I have no doubt that fucker instigated the insurrection that day. They need to look into Trump's activities. I know there was video floating around of him watching as it all went down, and they were having a party, and they were playing Laura Branigan's song, Gloria. So, you can't lie about that shit. He sat there and used his patsies to be the fall people for his actions. They need to go after Trump hand over fist. They need to lock his ass up. They need to take the family and lock them up. Too many people are being persecuted. And one of the people at that thing yesterday said there were even rioters trying to rip the eyes out of some police officers. That is just blind rage and hate. I couldn't believe what happened. And like I said, my older brother is a Trump supporter, but I told him that day, I said, I'm just glad you weren't crazy enough to give up your life and go to the Capitol and wound up being arrested or possibly shot. And I don't feel sorry for any of them. There's over 500 plus that have been arrested since this happened. They need to go away for more than 8 months. I heard one of them got 8 months in jail for his time in the Capitol. He should get more than 8 fucking months. He should get 25 to 75 years. Maybe he'll die in prison like the dating game killer recently did. So, yeah, it just makes me sick. Just makes me sick. Yeah. So, I sat and heard the whole 3 hours of that testimony yesterday, and I couldn't believe how traumatized those cops really are. It really changes your outlook on everything. Don't call me a liar because I know I'm speaking the truth. Just like I don't like going into a church because of what some people have told me. You're going to go to hell when you die. Your parents already went to hell when they died. You got the disability because of their sins. So, I mean, it's just sad. It really is. So let's see. Let's see what else here. Yep. Now they're saying that a retired U.S. general says the Trump White House was complicit in the planning of the January 6th election. This is the last article for the day, and I will share it with you. Let's see. Get the link, and I'll share it at the sidebar. And when you guys get time, look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Okay. Now, here we go. Yeah, and I've said it for many, many months, and I've said it for many, many weeks, that Trump is solely responsible for what happened that day on the Capitol. Just like I just told you. Let's see. Again, this says, retired U.S. general says the Trump White House was complicit in the planning of the January 6th insurrection. And before I read that, he kept telling them, please come to the Capitol. It's going to be wild. And they claim that they didn't get enough intelligence to get the proper protection for the Capitol. God damn. This one says, Lieutenant General Russell told MSNBC that the Trump White House was complicit in planning the Capitol riot. Henry also suggested Trump's White House was behind the delayed federal response that day. Henry conducted a review of the U.S. Capitol security after the attack. Retired General Russell, I'll just leave it at that. Retired Lieutenant General Russell was tasked by the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, with conducting a review of the security of the Capitol after January 6th on Tuesday said, Trump's White House was complicit in orchestrating the insurrection. And he says, and I quote, it says, it is my personal opinion that the executive branch was complicit in the planning and the delayed response that occurred in bringing in more federal assistance to the Capitol that day. The lieutenant said during an MSNBC appearance, underscoring that he had not reached the conclusion from the security review he spearheaded. Again, he says, it's my personal opinion that the executive branch was complicit in the planning and the delayed response that occurred in bringing in more federal assistance to the Capitol that day. Underscoring that he had not reached that conclusion from the security review he spearheaded. He says, that is my own perceptions based on what I've seen and what I've heard, and the fact that the former president is continuing to tell people this was not a riot. It meant no harm. It was like a picnic, the lieutenant said. The last I heard from him, he told them to go to the Capitol and raise hell. During an incendiary speech during the White House shortly before the violence to the Capitol, Trump had told lies about the 2020 election and called on his supporters to fight like hell. Trump, as we all know, was impeached for provoking the insurrection and was acquitted in the Senate with the help of his Republican bitches. I'll say it that way. Instead of allies, I call them Republican bitches, including GOP lawmakers who had said he had bore responsibility in a deadly riot. You know, and they have video in this article, by the way. There are open questions about why law enforcement was unprepared for that day and what caused the delayed federal response. A Capitol Police intelligence assessment from 3 days before raised alarm about the potential for violence from Trump supporters on January 6th, saying that Congress itself is the target, according to a 100-page report from the Capitol Police, the Inspector General. Federal investigators are looking to the insurrection, and the House had opened an investigation of its origins and the security failures around it. In the weeks leading up to the Capitol attack, Trump engaged in an unprecedented effort to overturn the election results. As Trump sped his lies of mass voter fraud, the president and his allies put forward dozens of legal challenges. All of them failed, by the way. So let's see. Trump urged his supporters to attend the Stop the Steal rally in D.C. on January 6th, when congressional lawmakers would gather to certify the victory of Biden. Big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Trump had tweeted, on December 19th, be there, it'll be wild. During his speech, Trump pushed his supporters to march to the Capitol. You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength. You have to be strong, Trump said. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. What happened next was among the most shocking events in U.S. history and most significant breach of the Capitol since the War of 1812. Trump effectively sat by and watched the violence unfold. Hours later, he called on his supporters to disperse, releasing a video in which he repeated his lies about the elections and that his insurrectionists were very special. Don't ever forget that. Before I finish this, Trump sat there for hours. Who knows what the hell he was doing there for hours? Probably gloating over the glee that the Capitol had been taken. I have no doubt on that shit. But he said he finally told them to go home and that he loved his supporters. Ugh. They need to look into him. They really need to look into Trump. And I'm not going to stop until they do. Let's see. In testimony on Tuesday before the White House Select Committee investigating the insurrection, 4 police officers were subjected to that violence that day. extricated by Trump and his Republican defenders. One of the officers referred to the insurrectionists as terrorists, while another denounced the Capitol attacks as an attempted coup. And you could go on Business Insider and read the article. And I'll share it again in case I didn't. And some of the Republican bitches are trying to blame Nancy Pelosi for the insurrection. No, I think it's Trump all the way because he's been lying the whole time. Yeah, I know. And my brother, before I close this out, my brother went to the Capitol. He had done some electrical work at some restaurants up in that area. And he said he saw the Capitol from the distance with the fencing up. And he says, you would have thought a war had went on down here. And I said, well, John, it did. Trump supporters stormed the place. They tore the place up. They tore up a memorial for the guy who said, make good trouble. They rubbed pee and poop all over the rotunda. They weren't humans. They were fucking animals. And I said, I'm just glad you weren't crazy enough to drop everything and go there and do that shit. One bitch got shot dead because of it. So, do you think Trump bears some moral responsibility? Yeah, I think so. I will never vote for Trump. I'll never vote for any of his constituents. Nat Getz needs to be up under a jail. Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to be in a psych ward or up under a jail. All those constituents need to be in jail for the rest of their unnatural lives. They're scum. They spit on the values of our country. We are the great American melting pot, whether they like it or not. Black, white, red, brown, purple, yellow, gay, straight, bi, nonconformed. Read the book. Look at the arc of the rainbow. And like the one guy told another police officer that had to deal with the N-word being flung at him several times, is this America? And he sat in the rotunda and cried. They didn't care about police officers. They didn't care about human lives. All they cared about was keeping an authoritarian in office. An egomaniac who only cared about eating hamburgers and drinking Diet Cokes, sitting on Twitter, spreading his lies. And I hope that places like YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, any social media platform at all will keep Trump off of it for good. Not just 2 years, for the rest of their natural lives. And the scary thing is, ladies and gentlemen, Trump tried to use his wife's account and other members of the family's accounts to try and regain access to Twitter. So, think about it. So, I'm going to wrap this video up. I'm going to start with the good stuff, if you want to call it that. Arthur the Aardvark will be leaving PBS after 25 seasons. I think PBS has made a mistake, but if it has to go, it has to go. They stopped production over 2 years ago, so I think it's pretty well sealed the deal for Arthur. I want to thank Mark Brown and the cast and the crew for bringing such a great show to the screen. Maybe someday they'll have another revival and do it right, but we won't know. Just like they want to have ER back on TV. It's not going to happen. People have their own memories of particular TV shows. Just leave it be. Then I heard about the heat and stuff over in Tokyo. I wish nothing but health and safety for our players and competitors. No matter what country you're from, I want safety for everybody over there. And for Simone Biles, even if she doesn't do the Olympics anymore, she accomplished a lot in her life. And it takes guts to admit that her emotional stake is not quite there. I think she did the right thing by pulling herself out and handling her mental capacity. I have to think that Young people that get into the Olympics, they're under enormous pressure. Probably some from parents, some from coaches and other family members. And you add the cameras of the world being put on you. I can't imagine the stress. And then I think about the people that are trying to do the tennis matches over there. One person had to be taken off court in a wheelchair. And one guy said, I can finish the match and I can die. Are you going to be responsible for this? And he has every right to ask that. And finally, in terms of the Capitol riots, do you think that Trump is responsible? In my humble opinion, yes. He's the one that told him to fight like hell. If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Remember? And it was Biden who picked up the bootstraps and told Trump to get his ass on TV and tell those people to go home. Sure, he told the people to go home after 3 hours, but he also told those maggots that he loved them. He's a sick, twisted, demented pedophile. They need to look into his ass, and they need to look so far up his ass that he'll never escape it. You know, and I think people are just tired of the lies and the bullshit. Especially in Margaret, the Taylor Greene bitch. And Matt Gaetz could go away for a long time if he is convicted. And I'm hoping that is the truth. You know, remember, Trump was also the same guy who said, I could walk up on him, I can grab women by the pussy. I don't even have to ask. I can go up and just start kissing them. Not in my world, buddy. You come near me, I'll find a way to get your jewels. Maybe he'll be like that one guy that had his thing cut off. Should happen. Trump is a demented motherfucker, and he needs to be locked up. You know, and I heard about his son losing the ability to speak at such a big event. So I'll look into that in the coming weeks. So, yeah. But otherwise, I think Trump should be held accountable for his crimes, and especially for the attack on our beautiful Capitol. You know, and the people that work the Capitol are at a terrible precipice. Do we keep it open, or do we keep it like a fortress? But with the maniacs still being fed their misinformation bullshit, I don't know. All I can say is that we go home, we hug our kids extra tight, and really teach them what America is about and what it should be about. To me, it should be about family. That's what the great American melting pot is. But we have attacks on the Muslim community, the Asian community, the gay community. Come on. And it's all because Trump opened the Pandora's box of white supremacy and white power. And it makes me sick. Maybe they should ship him over to Afghanistan and make him fire the guns. Bone spurs my ass. You know, and I call him Citizen Trump for a reason. He will always be Citizen Trump to me. He was never a good president to begin with. I've had to sit for 4.5 years listening to his bullshit. Even before he was elected, I knew he was a liar. You know, and I almost wish that Inside Edition tape ruined his chances of becoming president. Because he hasn't changed. You know he only cares about his Wall Street bitches. And, oh yeah, you know old Rudy Giuliani can't practice law for 2 years. Good. That's another guy that belongs up under a prison. So, I think by next week we might hear more on the committee. They're going to be doing more testimony, but we don't know. So, I'll that. But before I go, I want you guys to be safe during this heat wave. Make sure your kids are taken care of And if they have to go back to school wearing a mask, make them wear their mask and stay as clean as possible, even if they are vaccinated, because you never know if the person that they're going to school with is vaccinated or not. It's part of the new reality for now. So, yep, I always make sure I'm clean when I leave. I always wear a mask when I go out, and I haven't gotten sick once. And I don't make my trips very long. It's usually to the doctor's office or a short shopping trip. So, and even if my bus is late, I can get antsy now. So, yeah, I don't like staying out too long. But if anybody has any comments about any of these articles, read the articles first, and then you comment down below. Have a good afternoon, stay safe, and stay hydrated. Bye.